Welcome to the Marshall Pruett Podcast, presented by Cooper Tires, supported by PNC Bank. This episode we have part 2, the conversation with my friend, not my brother, but my friend Scott Pruett. We sat down a day or two before the Rolex 24 at Daytona in January, which was his farewell party, his retirement, his heading out on a high, or at least he was hoping to do so with the Lexus team. Things didn't exactly pan out in that storybook way for Scott, but having recorded part 1 of our life and career podcast earlier in January, we sat down at the end to capture part 2 that we have here, and we pick up talking about his life and times in Trans Am, something that he is especially proud of considering everything he's done from NASCAR to IndyCar to IMSA. We then get into the IMSA GTP side of things, having gone heavily in the part 1 of our interview into his Trans Am and IMSA GTO days. Really, his transformation from being the guy in some sort of tin top or silhouette into, all right, this guy's now very serious on the prototype end and also a winner there too. Then moved into the rather remarkable story of how he became an IndyCar driver, something that required his decision and his effort and even his money to make that happen, having saved up his winnings for many years in IMSA. Move on to, frankly, it's a little hard to listen to, honestly. The big life-altering crash that he had in testing. And let's just say that strength and fortitude are 2 attributes that you never have to question about Scott Pruett. From there we go into his recovery, his return, the Made in America Truesports IndyCar chassis program, and then get into the latter stages of that before we really kind of hit the pause button for future part 3 we're hoping to get here soon. And then we just closed on the most present item at hand, walking into his final race, strapping into the car for the final time to see how he was feeling. So always enjoy spending time with a person who I lovingly refer to as not my brother. So hopefully we will keep these going because he has so much to talk about from a career that has genuinely and truly spanned its 50th year this season. PNC is proud to sponsor Scott Dixon, driver of the number 9 car for Chip Ganassi Racing. Everyone tunes in on race day, but so much of the race is determined off camera during the work put in throughout the week, month, and year. From the gym to the practice track, Scott Dixon and the team take small steps every day to get closer to victory lane. Copyright 2018, the PNC Financial Services Group Incorporated. All rights reserved. PNC Bank, National Association, member FDIC. You can get every episode of the Marshall Pruett Podcast on iTunes, also on Podbean, on our Marshall Pruett Podcast Facebook page. All right, off we go with Scott Pruett.
In my Trans Am, it was 3 decades, right? So it was 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So it was quite a span of, and I don't think I remember the exact numbers, but it was 3 full seasons, and then I did a handful of races with Jack in 86 and in 88, kind of around it, helping to try and wrap up a championship for Lincoln Mercury. And so with that, I think that we started 50-something races maybe, and then won like 23 or 24. So the winning percentage was almost 50%.
See, in class, you'd be getting an F. You didn't even get to 50%, Pruett.
I know, right?
Good Lord, man.
What's wrong with you? And then and so in 87, and then again in 2004, and then again in 87, and then in 94, and then in 2003, 3 full seasons and 3 championships. So it was, if you look at the record, and if you look at the number of poles and the number of wins, I don't think anybody comes close to that except Peter Gregg.
I can hear Tommy Kendall furiously typing an email or text saying, "Don't forget about me." Some guy, you might have heard of him.
Yeah, Tommy, I mean, he had a lot of success, but he did a lot of racing there, very much as I did a lot of racing in IMSA. But a lot of success there, without a doubt. However, when you just look at the kind of like what you did when you were looking at all the road racers, and you look at the number of starts, and you look at the number of wins. And
per start ratio is...
It's pretty solid.
So let's park things for a minute and talk about that and the meaning of statistics to you. Talk to some drivers, whatever formula, and the super successful ones, you tell them, hey, while they're active, what does this mean? How does this mean? Most of them say, that's when I'm retired.
Yep.
Look, I don't care. Numbers and stuff,
right.
Those are for the fans.
Right.
You haven't been alone in this, but this is something that I know has mattered to you, especially as your career started building momentum, kind of a yearly reaffirmation that this thing is still working, or what is it? Because like I said, there are some who say, when I'm in my rocking chair, I'll look at the numbers. Why has this been an actively important thing to you?
Well, I would say I'm more on that first element. It's more, most anybody who comes up to me and asks me about it, I'll say, you know what, one of these days I'll look at all the statistics and sitting on the porch in a rocking chair having a glass of Pruett wine, right? And you can be sitting there with me together. We can be sitting out there just, enjoying the moment. However, when you're around and you are controlling those wins and those championships, the media, the PR, especially your own PR people, they want to talk about it. So you end up seeing it all the time. And when it's a good thing, obviously if it's not a good thing, we don't want to talk about it. But if it's a good thing, then
sure.
Is Pruett going to get to a 60th win? When's Pruett going to get to a 60th win? When's Pruett going to get his 6th overall Daytona? When's Pruett going to, break the record for the number of, extend the record for the number of Daytona in-class wins? And so all very cool things. And I must say when probably over the last 5-6 years, when I got to the end of the season, just because of where I'm at in my career and what I was doing, and I had to take a pause and reflect, okay, what did last year look like? Did we win a championship? Did we finish second in a championship? Did we finish third? How was it? How did I perform? Am I going to do it again next year?
I was going to say, is that factored into at all? Do I keep the train rolling here?
Exactly. That was a big part of it, not just from my side of it, but probably more from the team owner side of it. Because Chip, very successful, and there's a reason he's successful. He keeps people across the board. He keeps people that get the job done. I don't care if it's an engineer, a mechanic, a tire changer, his key guys like Mike Hull at the top running the operations. He keeps people in place that are getting the job done, and he gets rid of people who aren't getting a job done.
He likes winners.
He likes winners. He's very clear on that, obviously. So, and then, when, again, over the last 5-6 years, when you get to the end of the season, here I am 53, and then I'm 54, and then I'm 55, looking at, not that number's just a number. However, you still got to be getting a job done. And so I would look more back at those seasons from the standpoint of how was that season? Was I getting a job done? Was I fast? Was I getting poles? Was I winning races? Was I winning championships? And if I continually came away and said yes, which I did, we'd continue on for another year. There's nothing like living your life one year at a time. It's insane. It's nerve-wracking, and I think for most professional athletes, not just drivers, but most professional athletes, that we live our lives 1 year at a time, because contracts typically only last 1 year. I mean, there's a couple of those out there that are 2 years and maybe 3 if you're lucky. But there's always that qualifier in there where everybody gets together at the end of the season. Are we happy with where we're going? And so I don't know that a lot of people, a lot of listeners out there would truly appreciate what it would be like to know that you're going to be out of a job at the end of this year, and then you have to work to get that job back for the next year, and do that.
And year on.
35 straight years, 34, 40, 35, 40 straight years. It ends up being a part of life, but it's still very stressful. You talk to drivers, Actually, what you should do is talk to drivers' wives and girlfriends come November, December, and see just how stressful it really is.
Funny you mention that, because I can recall my life year by year since I got involved in motor racing around 85, 86, hardcore. Every year is broken down for me memory-wise. Who is a Formula One world champion? Who is the IndyCar champion? Who is the IMSA GTP champion? Whatever it is. But all of those events on a per-year basis. 88, Senna's first world championship. And I remember this. It's interesting. And for those who aren't in motor racing, I have to imagine that might be a strange construct where, again, every year is its own individual thing on your timeline. It's not, I've been with the company 20 years, and they gave me a this and a that, and I get the great parking spot. You go, that isn't something we strive towards, or we know that that isn't real to pursue, but we're also not complaining that we get to do this segmented way of living.
Not complaining for a moment. I've been blessed with this incredible ride.
We're sitting here in Daytona talking about race cars. If you and I were to complain, folks should throw flaming turds at us. So we closed our part one coming up through the 80s for you. We really, I think, stopped around 87 or so and said that we wanted to get into IndyCar. We wanted to get into IMSA GTP, because that was also a big part of what you'd been doing. Folks got to know you heavily through IMSA and Trans Am GT style, silhouette style racing, but you weren't exclusive to that. You did start adding in the prototype side, and heck, even one of your first pro tests came in a front engine Mustang prototype. Let's talk a little bit about the GTP side of your career before we get into IndyCar, because that's a pretty heavy shift. Where does the interest come for you to drive prototypes? Is that you actively seeking? Is that Jack Roush, the team that you're with, starting to look into it? Other teams reaching out? How does that open up for you?
Well, first it was other teams reaching out, Bayside, because of my relationship with Bridgestone. And they were involved with Bayside. That's how, and because of my success early on in the '86 season, I got a call from Bruce Levin and said, "Hey, would you like to drive my GTP car?" And let me tell you, if you're not driving the fastest car on the track, you want to be driving.
Absolutely,
that's where you aspire to be. And so getting behind the wheel with Bob Wallach at the Ford Dealers 500 in Columbus, and then going on to win that race with
86?
86.
Yeah.
Columbus.
What a great, horrible track.
Oh, it was a great track. Great memories, great track, fun times, great cars. 962s were great cars to drive. The harder you drove them, the faster they went. The more stuff you ran over, the faster they went. And so that was... and then, obviously, when people see that now I've gone from a sedan to the prototype and I can win there, that's when I would say that was also at the moment where Al Holbert was pushing on me pretty hard. Yeah. We went and did a bunch of testing in the Lowenbrow car.
So tell me about that, because that's something you and I have discussed between ourselves before. Al Holbert and Dan Gurney were my two heroes in motor racing.
Guilty.
And unfortunately we now have, they're no longer with us. But when you told me about that, I was fascinated by it, because at that time, Al and Holbert Racing, they were the kings. Nothing bigger, nothing more dominant. You winning at Columbus, that to me was the big pro-grade validation. But boy, this guy's great, beating the brakes off of people in GT cars. But as to your point, holy crap, now in prototypes, that to me is a thing where everybody would have to look in to have the king of GTP.
Yeah.
At that time,
right.
The most successful driver, most victories of anyone, plus back-to-back championship. Blah, blah, blah. What's that like? And what was that relationship the two of you developed?
It was inspiring and wonderful. And we did a full 2-day test at Mid-Ohio. Spent both days in the car and in the Lowenbrow 962, and he was pushing on me pretty hard. I mean, he wanted to sign me for 87, and so it was a very difficult time for me because I'm a loyal guy, and here I am with Ford, and I'm with Jack, and they've treated me really well. We've won, going on to win a championship, 2 championships that year because we won the endurance championship as well. And that's back in one of those moments where I can look back on, should I have? Should I have? Because that was the car to be in. And it was my loyalty that kept me from being in that car because Al wanted me. And then he ultimately went with Chip Robinson. But he offered me the deal, and I'd love to have you be a part of the program. And then I think we kind of touched on it all came full circle again when he came back after me to do the IndyCar program with Porsche. And as we talked, it was probably he and I had dinner in Columbus the night before he was killed. And when we finished up dinner, he was heading to the airport. And so it was a really tragic night there. So great relationship with Al, a continuing, ongoing relationship with Al over the years. And until his passing, and one where there was huge mutual respect between both of us. I mean, when I look at my heroes, Dan Gurney, Al Holbert, those guys are at the top, and Mario Andretti as well. But so that was pretty big moments for me.
So if you look at what you did get to drive prototype-wise, there was a Jack Roush Maxim.
Yeah, I like to try and forget that moment.
Yeah, and that's actually, we recorded a segment for that, I don't know, maybe a month ago that I've yet to run on our Strangest Cars I've Raced series. So we have a separate piece there. The bleep button gets used quite a bit in that one. There wasn't a whole lot of fond memories.
No.
So you're also, at this time, you're obviously being loyal with Jack, still had some of these really positive momentum.
Jack and Ford, both.
And Ford.
Yeah, both.
You still are having some, making some impressive statements, though. Where does the decision on, do I keep pushing to go prototype racing, 88, 89, 90, either with Jack or somewhere else? Because I'm sure there had to be a point that you came to and said, all right, I can do the GT stuff all day long, but there's a phase shift that needs to happen here. What was that reckoning you had with yourself?
Getting to the next step, without question. What's that next step look like? And so getting into the GTP car, winning in a GTP car, wasn't enough. And so with Ford's help getting to Europe, testing with LaRousse in a Formula One car, coming away from that with a realization it was going to be way too difficult for an American driver. Even though I did really well at the test, I still saw too much and too big of a hurdle to overcome. So then naturally looked at IndyCar and looked at, talked to a lot of IndyCar teams. I had this stigma around me that he's a sports car only guy. He can't, nobody wants to take a gamble on me, so I had to take a gamble on myself.
So I don't know what Jack Roush / Ford contracts paid in the 1980s. I do love the fact, though, that you told me you have your own archive, even of the contracts that weren't executed.
Right.
Which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
Maybe with some numbers blurred out. You need to make those things available at some point in time as you unpack your career for folks. So you have a desire to do IndyCar. There aren't the big full-season rides just beckoning, other than the one that you discussed with Al Holbert. You had not been a pay driver. You'd been a paid driver since karting. Mm-hmm. Did you have to talk yourself into reaching into your own pocket to pull from what you'd earned in savings to make that IndyCar debut with Dick Simon in 1988?
Nope.
No.
It's easy. Easy statement. I mean, easy. That was not let me tell you, the amount of time it took me to figure that out was moments.
Did you look at that as an investment, I imagine?
I looked and all the money I have in the world is because of racing. If it wasn't racing, I'd have nothing. I've been with nothing. I'm good with nothing, and this is a great gamble. And I came to the end of the '87 season, realizing here I just won the Trans Am Championship with Ford, Lincoln Mercury, Jack. Looking at that next step, what am I going to do? Thinking it was going to be Formula One. Jack really wanted me to go do NASCAR. I'm a California boy. I did go-karts. I'm on road courses. I didn't understand the culture of NASCAR. That probably should have more, but didn't. My eyes were set on the Indy 500. My eyes were set on open wheel. My eyes were set in that direction. And so when I looked at that at the close of the '87 season into the '88 season, I started, I contacted teams. Everybody said, but, great talent, but we don't know what you can do behind the wheel of an IndyCar. Well, I had to get behind the wheel of an IndyCar.
Me too, yeah.
So, looking at those people who are out there, contacted Dick Simon, did my rookie test out at Indianapolis Park. IRP. And got through all that stuff. Came to, spent all the money that I had, plus borrowed from friends, family and friends, to rent a ride for Long Beach just one time. And so didn't know what to expect. Besides just doing a little bit of testing, that's all I had done before I went to Long Beach. So
now Dick is known as a bit of a wheeler and dealer.
Yeah.
You come away feeling like you at least got a good deal on that, or
of course I do. Because here, when I'm looking back, it was one of the best investments I ever made.
I mean, you weren't selling oranges on the highway to help make up the deficit there.
He knew, where I was, and I think there was a part of him who felt like if things went well, he could potentially leverage me with a sponsor to move forward. And so we went to Long Beach, had a great show because I did both. I did the sedan race. I forget if it was IMSA or Trans Am because we were going back and forth.
I think at 88 was Trans Am.
Okay, I believe that to be true.
Yeah.
And then I was also doing the IndyCar race with Dick. And so through that, even though we didn't finish, we ran very strong, ran in the top 10, had a great showing, ran smartly. And then as Kevin Cogan had broken his arm, because of what I did at Long Beach, all of a sudden there was more eyes on me of what I was doing. And I get a call from Andy Kanapensky and said,
the Machinist Union,
Playboy Machinist Union, would you be interested in coming and driving for me at Mid-Ohio? I said, yeah. Went to Mid-Ohio, ran strong, ran top 5, was actually passing Raul Boisel, and he put me off the track and unfortunately ended our day. But in the rain, came and was running top 5, I was passing 5th position, going for 4th. And so I filled in for Kevin at Meadowlands. We had another great showing there. And all of a sudden, there was a lot more attention on me and what I was doing. And as we all know, Ray Hall was moving from Truesports to Craco.
Yep, Gallus and Craco.
And they're looking for a new young American. And I was a fit. Started having some conversations with Steve Horn, with Budweiser, and by the end of that season, I had wrapped up another IMSA championship, as well as came to terms on a 3-year deal with Truesports and Budweiser to go IndyCar racing.
So you
good investment, I think.
I mean, it has paid off many fold. So in '88, Dick Simon had an '88 Lola, which was the car to have if you weren't in a Penske.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The car you didn't want to have was a March. Mm-hmm. The '88 March was dreadful by comparison to some of its previous examples. What was it like soaking up this Cosworth turbo V8 engine, lightweight, nimble car in and around Long Beach, then Mid-Ohio again? I assume that from a lot of your experience already, it wasn't a didn't blow your mind completely, but performance-wise, this should have been pretty darn impressive.
It was, without question. And horsepower-wise, no, because we had a lot of horsepower. With all the stuff we did with Jack, I mean, he was a king of torque and horsepower. We had really strong engines. But nimbleness and braking and just how those, I mean, you're going from a sedan car to an Indy car, and so it was, worlds apart. And I didn't know, I mean, that was the first time that I've ever driven an open wheel car except for go-karts. So I'm just getting in there. I'm on a wing and a prayer, baby. I'm just driving from the seat of my pants because I don't know.
And one of the things that always fascinates me is with drivers like yourself that goes from a high-level form of racing to a different one, but one that the sensory input is going to just be dialed up massively compared to many of the things that you drove. Is that what you found, that these crazy neurons firing from your karting days or whatever it might be, like those are the things that started to come back and feel normal in this IndyCar? Or was it something where the transition wasn't that big of a deal?
It was more in my wheelhouse of being able to push my own ability with the car's ability, where leading up to that, with any sedan car, whether you start showroom stocks or go right through to, GTO at the time or what a GT3 car right now, you can only push them so hard.
Sure.
I mean, you have to learn how to drive them with the rhythm and the understanding of how to maximize their speed without forcing their speed. So it's very much an understanding of you can't go in too deep, you can't get on the throttle too hard, you got to let the car. I mean, there's a lot of waiting. With Indy cars, now I was pushing my abilities closer what I was used to through the race car. So things are happening faster. You get the throttle sooner, you go in deeper, you turn harder, you're more aggressive with everything that you're doing, and the car's taking it and responding to it and going faster. And the more I did that, the faster it went. And so that was right up my alley of more what I was used to instead of what I was trying to adapt to.
So as 89 is coming towards you, you've been a part of factory programs. You've been the keystone of what's been happening. How are things any different or similar at the IndyCar level? Because you can be the featured member of a Trans Am program for manufacturer. Not that many Americans are going to know. The ones that do are going to love you, but it's not a high-profile thing. What was it like becoming a high-profile person in a series back then that was above NASCAR? I mean, it was America's number one form of motor racing. I don't know if that was something where your chest swelled a little bit, but, there had to be a sense of like, okay, I've arrived, or do you let yourself indulge in that?
Scared to death. Are you kidding me?
Okay.
I'd never raced an oval before. I'm going to Phoenix. I've never been on an oval before, testing for the first time. I think we did one test. We went to a race. It was like, and I have nobody to help. I have no mentor. It's not like I have
one car team.
It's not like I'm, tapping into my teammate. Okay, what do we need to do? You didn't get a chance to look at data. It's seat of the pants, man. And I wish so much I would have had a mentor. Like with Mario, he had his father. With Al Jr., he had his father. I mean, there's so many guys who had mentors to help them understand, even with guys coming up from let's say the Super V ranks. They would do some ovals, and then they would step into Indy cars. I went from road courses and a sedan car to Indy cars on an oval at Phoenix, which is pretty daunting, So,
all right, so
I'm scared to death.
Let's talk about
else.
that a little bit. So, you're telling me you want me to go into that turn,
right?
More or less flat out, hang a hard left, and believe that physics and science is going to keep me in 2 or 3 pieces instead of 1,000.
Yeah.
That has to take some balls. What is that inner conversation you have with yourself when you're having to learn, not in 190 horsepower Super V, but 700-800 horsepower IndyCar?
Right.
What's that conversation like with yourself?
It's pretty stern, a bit insane, And one of those where you just had to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and then you find a limit. And then I tried to knock the fence down coming off turn 2. The wall survived.
Okay.
The car didn't. Got a little bit broken up. Nothing, I mean, just tore up, nothing broken. And so I found the limit of what I could do. And you just had to keep building from there. So it's all that, trying to learn that on your own by yourself on a test day. Now you get into a race with all the turbulence and all the cars and all the stuff, and then it just takes and magnifies that to another level again.
So you finish 11th on your team debut on an oval. I mean, you should have gotten some sort of award or prize for that, because finishing 22nd in the wall or with a blown motor or something, that's the normal IndyCar oval introduction for someone with zero oval experience. How did you pull off that finish on your debut? Was there a sense of self-preservation of maybe today isn't the day to prove that I'm the next world champion, or how did you do that?
It was learning, what they call it, learning by fire. And so, I was learning as the race unfolded, and I was learning more about the turbulence and what it's like when a guy cuts you off or takes the air off your nose, and was able to continue. I was never timid, but I just was able to get more aggressive and more aggressive and more aggressive as the race unfolded, because I started learning and started understanding and was getting to that point of, being pretty racy and running side by side with guys and doing all those things you're talking about. But it was all just, trial by fire, jump in and go.
Let's stir a little bit further down in your 89 debut season, because this, I think, with the context of everything we've discussed, the big, big jump you're having to make into an unfamiliar world, learning ovals every time you go out. You finished 8th in the championship as a rookie, and it wasn't a fluke. I mean, if you look at your results, and this is without Long Beach as a point-scoring event, you finished, and let's talk about Indy in a moment, but 10th at Indy, 5th at Milwaukee, 2nd at Detroit.
Should have won that race, by the way.
5th at Portland, 6th at Cleveland, 3rd podium the Meadowlands, 6th at Toronto. Michigan was a 17th, but Pocono your 8th, Mid-Ohio was forgettable, but Road America 8th, Nazareth 8th, 4th at Laguna. It's pretty much a season spent inside the top 10, if not the top 5 or 6, as a rookie.
Yeah.
Good team, extremely good team.
Yep.
You had the Judd engine, which
not so good.
Wasn't of all the choices. There were others that
wouldn't be your
most
first.
Probably would have made.
Yeah.
What do you think of with this rookie season? Because again, it's wholly remarkable. If you just look at your career and say 8th, that number tells none of the story.
Yeah, it doesn't. It was such a monumental task moving from where I was into that. You talk about Detroit. We qualified. Forget if we qualified first or second, but we qualified right at the front, and we led a lot of that race. And unfortunately, because the Judd got such horrible fuel mileage, I really had to start backpedaling, and then I had to let Emerson go to go on to take the victory. And the engine was not great. Typically the issues we had were engine failures, not enough power, tough to drive. That coupled with the fact of a driver who...
Bad mileage and it blew up.
The fact that I'm learning along the way. So I think I came away from that season, and I think, I'm looking forward to the next season. Man, I got this one under my belt. I got another one coming. I've learned so much about driving these cars. I'm ready to go back and do it again.
So let's talk about Indianapolis in just a moment, but I want to add maybe a final exclamation point on this insane rookie season of yours. So you finished 8th in the championship as a rook. Behind you was the person who you replaced. Bobby Rahal. Behind him was Arie Luyendyk. In front of you, in 7th, Danny Sullivan. In 6th, Mario Andretti. In 5th, Al Unser Jr. 4th, Teo Fabi. 3rd, Michael Andretti. 2nd, Rick Mears. Champion Emerson Fittipaldi.
Right.
I'm just saying, if you're a rookie and the only people in front of you are named Fittipaldi, Mears, Andretti, Fabi, Unser Jr., Andretti, and Sullivan.
Not bad.
Indy 500. Mm-hmm. Childhood dream. Well, I mean, if you're an American.
Yes.
I don't care
for sure.
what corner of America, what gender, what nationality. Indianapolis. Yep. That's our Mecca. That's our holy land.
Still is. Love that place.
Tell me about going there for the first time and knowing that you were meant to be in a vehicle that went around there at 220 miles an hour. I can at least tell you from my own experience walking through Gasoline Alley out past the grandstands to be able to see the track for the first time. When you say speechless, I mean, truly, you just stand there and say, this is bigger than me. This is bigger than anything I could have imagined, and I've dreamt of it, and I'm standing here. Should I assume that there was a similar sense of awe for you?
Of course, especially at that moment in my life. There's two tracks that do that for me, Indianapolis and Daytona, because both are somewhat similar as you enter the place. They're just these massive bleachers and signage of where you're at, and then most definitely as a kid growing up, I mean, you no matter what you were doing or where you were at, you were either watching or listening to the Indy 500 without question. And so now to be there, and first you go through your rookie orientation, and that all went really well. It all seemed really easy. But again, you're out there by yourself.
You're an oval veteran by now.
Oh yeah, I got a couple. I got two races on two. I think what I have probably Phoenix and Milwaukee under my belt.
Milwaukee was after.
Oh well,
so you had one oval race on a 1 miler.
So I'm a veteran now. I know how this whole thing works. And then getting into the race was a whole different story. You know, starting 33 cars there, and I think the biggest hurdle for me initially was getting through qualifying. Scary as shit, man, because here you are, and you got to put a couple 4 laps together,
and you don't have a Chevy,
and you don't have a Chevy, which is just which was crushing everybody. I mean, they had it. I mean, they did.
Or a really good Cosworth as well.
Right. Yeah. Either way. So we had the third engine of choice. However, with Steve Horn and Truesports, they've been there before. They've had success there before, and so we were just doing our deal. Got through qualifying, all went solid. Got in the race. The race just got better and better and better and better. And you'd have to look at exactly how the race was unfolding, but we worked in the top 10, and we were up into the top 5, right at the top 5. And then with about 8 or 10 or maybe even 12 laps to go, the battery went down. Had to make a quick stop, and unfortunately that's when I dropped from more towards top 5, but stayed in the top 10. And it was awesome. I mean, great race, great times, and they talk about what it was like to be at Indy in that era. All through kind of that era into the mid-'90s, and to see what 500,000 people look like. It was an ocean of color. You had to have escorts. You had to have the police bring you in and out, because you could not get in and out of Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There was just way too many people and way too many. I mean, the streets were covered with cars and people and stuff and things. It was, without being there and being a part of it and seeing it, I don't know if you ever can, I talked to you about 500,000 people. Well, 500,000 people sounds like a lot of people. But when you're there in the middle of it, and you can't, you're shoulder to shoulder.
It's gridlock.
It's
human gridlock.
Unbelievable. Without being there and experiencing it, you'll never really truly know what it's like to
imagine the most uncomfortable bus ride or subway, and then throw 1,000 other trains, a train 1,000 times that size.
Acre after acre after acre after acre of these people and cars and things and stuff. It was awesome. Awesome.
PNC is proud to sponsor Scott Dixon, driver of the number 9 car for Chip Ganassi Racing. Scott knows that the road to victory lane starts today. Copyright 2018, the PNC Financial Services Group Incorporated. All rights reserved. PNC Bank, National Association, member FDIC. So at this point of the additional appreciations of your rookie season, it's not as if you got and mastered Indianapolis at your first try, but you did show an aptitude for this completely strange form of racing to you that at Phoenix were able to grasp what was needed and make continual improvement. At Indianapolis, with the third choice of engine of 3, hell, it might have been fourth and there were only 3, still able to excel and perform and move forward. Did you take the time then to realize that, wow, I wonder if all of my sports car experience, where I'm jumping from a GTU, GTO, you name it, throw me in anything, I'll figure it out, and pretty quickly. Was that present at all in your ability to pick up ovals, or did that just stand out as a normal thing for you?
You know, Marshall, quite frankly, I just kept my head down, kept going, and was doing what I do. You know, my God-given talent, it was feel, it was sense, it was something that I never looked back. I guess I just always kept looking forward and just kept trying to do my best, you know, taking each race and building on the next one and on the next one, and never taking that moment to really, I never took a moment to look back and go, oh man, I was really getting that figured out. It was more, how can I get better? How can I get better? How can I get better? You know, where can I push? Where could I have been deeper, gone deeper? Where could I have, you know, picked up more speed? It was more always that moving forward.
So you round out the 89 season, amazing rookie effort. 1990 should have been, holy crap, look out world. Scott Pruett's coming to take everything you got. That didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
What went sideways for you on this rapid ascension that, forget motor racing, this was fairly unpleasant just on a personal level?
Well, you know, I signed on with Dyson to do the Rolex 24 and to do Sebring. And a brand new 962.
I have a photo of you and sitting in Rob's car. It's a beautiful photo.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, what a great guy. Great car, great guy. Took delivery of the car here. I mean, that's what Porsche did. You know, they delivered cars you could just put on a racetrack and go race. It was pretty cool. And with all that, with what Truesports, Steve Horn and group are doing, they're looking at the future. They're looking at where they're going and how are they going to get there. Ultimately, building their own car and developing continue to develop the jet engine, both of which didn't turn out particularly very great. But at the time, there was a lot of passion behind that. And so, taking the current car that we were running. And then making significant upgrades to it, uprights and suspension and numerous things. And so we were off testing. And
where were you at?
So we were testing. We had the opportunity to go test at West Palm at the fairgrounds. So we were emulating what was a street track.
Something that almost never. I mean, it's a fantasy for most teams to get to actually do a street test on a street course.
Yep. You know, typically dangerous as hell because, you know, there's barriers and walls right around a track. But that was that opportunity for us to go test there. And inadvertently, one of the mechanics had left one of the bleeder screws undone on the rear caliper. It came undone while I was out running at the most inappropriate time, which was into the back straight. And I lost all my rear brakes with the balance bar, swung all around, had a little bit of front brake, went straight off the end of the straightaway, ran into a cement barrier. They figured point of impact was about 110. Just crushed everything in front of me. My legs, because you're feet sat in front of what would be the imaginary front axle.
It's a different era where the whole concept of moving a driver's feet behind the center line of the front wheels had yet to become.
And because of that crash, that speared that to get moving forward on a safety element. Took them an hour and a half to cut me out of the car.
Jesus.
I sat there just in pain. They couldn't give me anything. My legs are just all wrapped up in carbon and aluminum, and just looking at my legs was just horrific because they're just a mangled mass of stuff all around in front of me. And I'm in the car. I'm totally pinned in there. I'm up on my elbows, kind of hold me up because my back's fucking killing me. Excuse my mouth. Oh, sorry about that,
brother.
My back's killing me, and then them, trying to figure out, getting little hacksaw blades and trying to cut stuff away and get me out of the car. And so literally about an hour and a half later, they finally got me out. I remember one of the last things I remember, because once they didn't give me anything until I was out of the car. And then as soon as I was out of the car, there was a rescue helicopter there, evac. Obviously the medics and all that stuff were there. Last thing I remember is my left ankle just almost swinging off. I mean, it just spun, just almost like it was just attached by just a little bit of stuff, which it was. And then I only remember bits and pieces for the next 2 days. They put me in They put me in the airvac helicopter, took me to the airport where there was a jet waiting, medevac jet. Sent me to Indianapolis. So I broke my heels, shattered my ankles, broke both my knees, and broke 2 vertebrae in my back. So after the first day, it was about a 10, 11-hour surgery to repair kind of waist down. So my knees, my legs, my ankle, and then it was about another 10-hour surgery, putting in all hardware and this jacking mechanism in my back because I had broke 2 vertebrae in my back, and then I sat out the rest of the season.
What do you learn about yourself sitting in that car pinned? Because I know and I'm guessing 99% of folks would absolutely go psychotic.
I just had to stay calm. And here's the crazy thing. I remember everything because I didn't hit my head. I remember clearly every moment that took place. From the moment I lost my brakes, trying to think what the heck am I going to do, to the moment of impact, to thinking, oh my gosh, I'm really screwed here. Taking off my helmet, throwing it up, thinking I have to throw it up and over the cement barrier in front of me, which I had crashed into because I didn't want to fall back on top of me. And then sitting there watching them trying to cut me out of this thing for an hour and a half was one of those moments in your life you'll never forget. That's for sure.
So you are broken badly. You have what kind of recovery or rehabilitation period that's projected at least? And what kind of inner conversation are you having as to whether this thing that you love that almost just killed you is something you should ramp up to get back into again?
So, how long before I get back in the car? That's all I thought. How long? What do I need to do? Moved to, at that time I was in Columbus, moved to Indianapolis, got an apartment that was...
Tell me it was the first floor.
Tell
me
it
wasn't like 5th floor, no elevator?
Yeah, first floor.
Okay.
And I treated it like a job. So I was literally, a block away from the therapy facility. And so it was kind of two-pronged. I had to have constant care. So friends, family, people would come and stay with me and get me to and from. And because I was in a bed for, a couple weeks, and then I was in a wheelchair for 3 months, and then I was on crutches for another 3 months, and leg braces and back braces. And so I had to focus on all my injuries But I also had to try and figure out how to keep myself in shape as well. So I would go to, it was called Indianapolis Physical Therapy and Sports Medicine. And so I would spend part of my day just working on the parts that were broken up until about lunch. So I showed up 8:30, 9 o'clock, worked till 12, 12:30, got back in at 1:30, stayed there till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, training. I did a lot of, like my upper body still worked, so I was doing, cardio with the UBE, which is kind of spinning your arms around on a, kind of like an upside-down bicycle-ish type thing. And, dips and all that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to figure out how to keep myself somewhat in shape to be able to get back in a car, as well as trying to fix all the broken stuff. And I just treat it like a job, 6 days a week. Here I am going to try and figure out how to get myself going again. And with that single focus of when can I get back in a race car.
So if I remember, Truesports brought in Raul Boisel?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What conversations did you have with Steve Horn and I guess Truman family about next step for you? Because obviously a second year, follow-up year to this awesome rookie year wasn't going to happen. One would naturally be concerned, am I going to have a job waiting for me in 91? What were those conversations like with the family and also with Steve?
Barbara, Steve, and Budweiser, great. You know what? When you're ready, car's ready. Period. You just focus on taking care of you and getting back in the car. We're there for you. So that was as good as they could have, of anything they could have told me. And so I didn't think about that. I just focused on my training and my recovery.
So as you are getting back closer to your, I guess, best version of yourself in light of the injuries, because these aren't, while repairs can be affected, repairs don't always mean good as new. You are going to carry some of this with you permanently. Mm-hmm. You had to know that.
You didn't know that. You didn't. I mean, I didn't think that. I mean,
Really?
I'm just trying to get back. I had no idea of what the future was going to look like with all these injuries. All I was thinking was, how can I get back? I mean, how fast can I get back in that car? I mean, I'm pushing on Terry Trammell, who was the main surgeon, and I forget the other surgeon's name, Bailey, I think, Dr. Bailey. He did my legs, Trammell did my back. I'm pushing them. How hard can I work? How hard can I work? How hard can I push? How hard can I? Because I wanted to push that envelope, and those guys were great at letting you push the envelope. An interesting story, I had just gone, so every 5 or 6 years I go and get an x-ray of my back and all the hardware and see how it's all doing. Is it still on place? Is everything still good? And this year I went to a friend of mine just outside of Augusta, and he's a Dr. Gloystein, and he's actually a surgeon out of the U.S. Army. Mm. And so he's hardcore, great guy, used to seeing kind of the ugliest of ugly stuff. And so he takes a x-ray and comes back in. He goes, everything looking good. He goes, man, you got some vintage stuff there in your back. He said, we don't use any of that kind of stuff. And he says, a number of those things in your back were never legal as well.
Really?
Guys used them, because it was state of the art. It was, what was absolute, the leading edge at that moment. And Trammell was known for pushing that as hard as he could. And it was the best stuff he could have done in light of what was available and to help me get back as fast. But it was funny now hearing this other surgeon goes, we don't use this stuff at all anymore. That stuff's all, old vintage stuff.
Scott Pruett, the walking medical museum.
Yeah, right. But at the time, it was absolute state of the art and somewhat illegal. So it was, anyway, that was an interesting conversation. But for me, where I was at that moment, it was still just how can I get back? What do I need to do to get back in that race car?
So while you are on the mend, Truesports team is continuing what they had started with the heavy in-house development of the Lola, saying, well, why not just go all the way? Made in the USA program out of Ohio. Don Halliday designed Truesports 91 chassis. When did you know about that, when that was going to start kicking off? And was that a motivation at all for you, knowing that this pretty amazing, made in America program was there waiting for you whenever you were ready, or ready in time for the 91 season?
No. Mm-mm. It was more, I didn't have the state of mind to think beyond just trying to get back. I knew all this was going on. In fact, that was very much knew that was going on in fall of '89, because that was kind of the first step of some of the stuff we were doing and some of the stuff we were testing was in that direction. And so, so for me, yeah, it was going to be cool, but I need to figure out how I can get there from where I'm sitting right now.
Tell me about the first opportunity to test after you have gone through this lengthy recovery process. I can't imagine that every part of your lower extremities was just happy and not sore or angry and pushing back at you, but what's the mental process of knowing that on date X I'm going to climb back into one of these things? Was there, other than the desire to get back, were you having to take a bit of a physical inventory to see how tender were feet and ankles and otherwise? Or were you just taking the strongest stuff you could?
You give me way too much credit.
Well, all right.
So I crashed in March of '90, and as we talked, shattered my ankles, broke my heels, broke my knees, because my knees popped up and hit the bulkhead, so it snapped them both right through the center.
Jesus.
And then breaking my back. So I'm working hard, and I'm just thinking, okay, how and when, and I'm still on crutches as I'm thinking about it. I really, okay, how can I, who out there do I know who would sign on to let me in their car? And as it turns out, friend Paul Gentilossi down in St. Petersburg, he's got a Trans Am car down there. And I was talking to him. He said, yeah, go out and take a few laps. And didn't tell anybody. Didn't tell, get a hold of Trammell, because I know what he would have said. Are you crazy? No way. And I had my back brace on, but I had to get in the car and went out and ran, being out of the car, went out and ran very competitive laps, very competitive laps. And I had to have that for my soul, because I had been away from it for this long with a single focus. And you question yourself, right? You're going, do I still have it?
Yeah.
Am I going to be scared? Do I still have it? Can I get it done? Can I go out there? And going out and doing it, it's like, oh yeah, I'm good. This is good. So that was my first, that was October. So
that's insane.
It was insane. It was stupid and insane, but that's what we do.
That timeline as well. I mean, that just has to speak to your lifelong commitment to
stupidity?
Extreme fitness. Well, no, but your extreme fitness. I mean, you were in a place, you had to maintain that fitness. Granted, youth obviously helped as well, but that recovery period also was just, I remember thinking, this sounds like an 18-month process.
Yeah.
Had this guy just do it in 6, 7...
The night before I crashed, I was a big runner. The night before I crashed, I went out and ran 5 miles, sub 5-minute miles. After the next day, I haven't really been able to run again. I mean, I can go kind of run-ish, but with all the stuff I've broken between knees and back, and especially my ankles, I went from, it was just doing something you love to never doing it again. It's pretty crazy.
So we've got about 20 minutes or so until I need to let you off to your next engagement. I think when we first sat down, we thought we might do this in 3 or 4 episodes. I think we have been extremely naive to believe that was possible. But again, I blame you, man. It's your fault.
Oh, yeah.
You should have had a shorter and more boring career.
Right.
You and I have discussed the 91 and 92 seasons with Truesports, the Made in the USA car, and I think those might be 2 great years for us to kind of finish out this episode on, because what followed in 93 was another interesting chapter.
Right.
So this beautiful, almost blood red Truesports chassis, 91. Judd engine, you knew
all carbon.
You were familiar with Judd engines by that point, but this Don Halliday design, carbon fiber, looked like a missile. Low side pods looked like wafers. Right. I mean, just this thing was shrink wrapped. Handled, it did so many things well.
We actually called that car clearance.
Clearance.
Because everything was so tight on clearance. Everybody was pinching their fingers in around the car, and things didn't fit. We had to grind here. To your point, everything was just tucked in and tight, and just horrible to work on. So they nicknamed it clearance.
Wow. Tell me about that car, and tell me about, on an IndyCar level at least, back to your introduction. The one guy, right? You didn't have teammates to bounce stuff off of.
Right.
But this also wasn't a Lola or a March coming with a base setup.
Yeah.
Or something that had 7 or 8 people running it, and you could at least go and look for a direction, maybe a feedback that one of those engineers might pass down to you. You're on your own island.
Right.
You guys made this damn thing. Wind tunnel in Ohio.
Right.
I mean, this is a true American pride effort. Tell me about being at the center of all that, because you've got to be the one to help develop this, and we'll get to the car's abilities and successes, but was that something you were ready for?
Yeah. I mean, that was the nice thing. Yes, I believe it. I'm as people who know me, I'm very patriotic. I love this country. I love and support our military. I love everything that we have here. And so the thought of doing something all-American was pretty cool. And seeing the commitment from Steve, seeing the commitment from Barbara, seeing the commitment from Budweiser, all that was, I mean, how could you not be excited to be a part of that? And so the first car, the 91 car, testing had gone pretty well. If it would have had a Chevy, it would have been untouchable. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
It would have been absolutely untouchable because that car was that good. With the Judd, not so good. It didn't drive very well. The engine didn't really run well. However, the car itself, even on our maiden voyage, I think our first race was Australia.
Surfers, yeah.
So here we go, brand new car, brand new track, brand new continent. And it was, even its maiden voyage, had really great potential. And it was a fun car to drive. I loved that car.
What did it do, having been in Lolas, been in Marches? What did it do that was unique or as good as the others, if not better? What were its strengths? What were its weaknesses outside of the engine?
It did everything a little better. And I think it also had a better aero package. And especially on the faster tracks, it really started to show through where the potential with that car was. And especially at Milwaukee, the car was a rocket ship at Milwaukee. I just didn't have any power to get by people. I was inside, outside. It was a really great car to drive and just underpowered. Chevy took another step forward. They had traction control. They had all these things, and we were just not getting anywhere with the engine program, barely being able to finish races without, DNFs, difficult to drive, and so on. But the chassis, huge potential. It was like, again, if it was Chevy powered, it would have been a dominant season for us.
So let's talk about Indy in this car. Mm-hmm. So this would be your second Indy 500 on an island again, with this swoopy, beautiful creation. What's your month of May looking like? I mean, you finished 12th, so from a finishing standpoint, top third of the field. What was the car telling you throughout the month that gave you, hope or belief that you could perform well, knowing that the power deficit had only increased since the last time you were there?
That you couldn't dwell on that because it was just unfortunate that the power plant was as bad as it was, and especially at Indy. I mean, Indy's power. We all know. You have to have a good power. I mean, you have to have a good car, but let me tell you. You can talk to Alonso Jr., and you can talk about, the Mercedes he ran there with all the horsepower and how the car handled. It had a lot of power. It didn't handle so good, but it had a lot of power. And so when you look at that race, we had a solid run, I think, for the deficit we had on a power plant standpoint. Again, I just go back to if there was a situation where we would have been Chevy-powered, people would have looked at that whole program a lot differently moving forward. People would have been absolutely on board to buy the car. Other teams.
I mean, it's one of those things that, history is what it is. Mm-hmm. But I look back at that with a longing memory of what I'd hoped the program would become. And I know that's just me from the outside of having loved it and seen it, but loved it. So towards the second half of the season, was there something that manifested itself that wasn't there before? Because it seemed like the first half of the season, new car, learning everywhere you go. You get into the second half of the season, and if it's a road or street course, they can't pry you out of the top 5 in the results. I mean, it's there. I think you finished the season Laguna with a 7th, something like that. But really, at least from the outside, the arc looked like first half season learning it, second half of the season, they're now getting a lot out of it. Is that what happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely. Because with any new car, that's a new car. And
let's not underestimate the task here. Mm-hmm. Roger Penske had his Penske cars outfit in Poole, England, where they're manufacturing cars specifically for him with unlimited resources. Lola is filling most of the field. There's March that's still there a little bit, barely.
Yeah, barely.
But for the most part, a one-off single car, medium-sized team. If we're talking
small,
right?
Small, yeah.
I mean,
because you got to realize the resource is one car.
Yeah.
So even though we had reasonable money, it was just one car. So when you look at a two-car Penske organization,
crazy endeavor.
Most everybody did 2 cars. Most everybody did 2 cars because you had double the amount of data and development and all that.
And we'd see in '92, Galmer would get in with their own. So they had a couple of cars. But the concept of, call it a rogue team, hey, why not? We know we can always buy something off the shelf, but damn it, I think we can do this ourselves and do it better. Mm-hmm. This really was a leap that we hadn't seen for a while in IndyCar. And that 91 season, I think, emboldened a lot of folks to give it a serious thought for the future because you guys were succeeding, not winning, but succeeding at, with what you were facing. What are those 4th, 5th, and whatnot towards the second half of the season? How are those registering with you? I see the huge odds. We are, in relative terms, slaying the giant, or is it, I'm never going to be happy with 4th. I'm here to win. How did that register with you?
It registered that there was a lot of other things going on as well. So you can see what was going on with the racetrack with results. We felt the only thing we need is a Chevy engine, and we're set after that. So there's negotiations that have been started with Budweiser, Truesports, Chevrolet. For all intents and purposes, we know we're going to Chevrolet for the 92 season. In the midst of all that, I'm approached by Ganassi, and he's saying, come drive for me, because here I was, 89, 90, 91, a 3-year deal. So I'm at the end of my 3-year deal with Truesports, with Budweiser, and I'm looking at the future, and I'm seeing how good this car's running, and I'm thinking all we need is a Chevy engine. I believe in the Made in America thing. I got Chip, who, and again, I think this is one of the contracts that I have.
Yes.
Still.
This in '91 would have been Chip's second year as an independent entrant. Mm-hmm. So it's not,
and
we know who he is today, but back then it was an upstart team.
Wasn't quite what most certainly wasn't now, but most certainly at the time he was one of those guys that you wanted to drive for. And so I was questioning, what am I going to do?
You've had a lot of these in your career, which I guess is pretty awesome. It's one thing to go, geez, I have no other choice. I guess I'm driving for Fred again next year, whomever. But yeah, this was.
It was. So
what's a young Chip Ganassi courting Scott Pruett scenario like? We know how much of a frickin' bludgeoning instrument he is today. Same guy back then, a little softer gloves.
Great guy. I mean, great guy. Very direct.
Oh, we love him. We give him hell every chance we can. But
but most certainly the same guy. I mean, his focus, like my focus, is going winning. What do you want to do? We want to win. All right, let's win. So my conversations with him were very much, we'll give you the best equipment we get the best people we get the best stuff we'll get, and we're going to go win. And it's a 3-year deal, and I'm thinking, wow, that's really cool. That's really cool. And then the other side of my brain's going, I've just gone through all this stuff with Truesports. They stood right by my side through a very difficult time for me. We have this car that truly is pretty spectacular to drive, and an engine that is truly horrible to drive. We're going to get that piece fixed. And Truesports is offering me another 3-year contract, so 92, 93, 94. And I'm thinking, you know what? I got to stick by these guys. I mean, they've been way too good to me. I'm tempted so much to do this with Chip. However, with Barbara and Steve and Budweiser and Group and everything, and the fact that I knew we were moving from Judd to Chevy, I felt like that's it.
That was the missing part with this Chevy lights out.
Right.
So what we haven't told folks is you and I recorded another little mini episode about a month ago in my new and yet to launch Why It Failed series of cars that seemed like they should have been world beaters but were not. And I intentionally recorded the first and I think only episode so far with you on that 92 Truesports, now Chevy-powered. Don't want to rehash that entire conversation, but one of the things you said was, in hindsight, man, if we'd only taken that 91 car and stuck a Chevy in the back of that, we would have just run the table in 92. That wasn't what happened. New chassis was designed, took all the learnings from the 91 car and bit like a wet noodle.
It was, the best thing about that program was a Chevy engine. Now everything is flip-flopped. We've gone from an incredible race car with a bad engine now to an incredible engine. And
in the corners, surrender the straights. Now
It was terrible. I mean, it was beyond terrible. It was difficult to drive. It never performed. It was slow. It was, all those things. And unfortunately, Bobby Rahal learned that in '93 when he took over that program and came away going, this car's terrible. I mean, it really was a terrible car. Do I know exactly why? I don't. Don Holliday, Steve Horn might be better ones. I don't know the answer to that. I don't. As much as I was right in the middle of that, I don't know that anybody at that moment came away saying, well, it's because of this. Because if it was one thing, we would have fixed it. It was more than one thing. And it couldn't be fixed. And then for me, tragedy struck again. Because at the end of that season, Budweiser's out. They're going with Kenny Bernstein. They canceled their contract. I think it was an out because of performance. Truesports, even though Barbara was holding on to this thing, she wasn't going to bankroll it. So the team folded up. Steve Horn went on his way. And at the end of the 92 season, here I was sitting with a 1 year of a 3-year contract with nothing going on for the 93 season.
It's like you know how to add that perfect period to a conversation. Well, let's save part 3. We will start on this odd performance IndyCar 93 season, but it also opens up some doors for you to play in some things that you had loved before. So, again, I blame you, man. If you just had a boring career, you did 8 years in one thing, nothing else, you'd be done by now. But, we got to record
There's some interesting
more
things coming. And there's a lot of, what happened in 93, and then we're not, we're just getting to start to touch on Firestone and my relationship with Bridgestone and how that moves forward and testing and development.
Patrick Racing.
Back to Trans Am and Chevrolet and
NASCAR's just a few years down the road. Well, you're about to embark on your final. I still only half believe that, by the way. Rolex 24. 2003 Buckler won overall in a Porsche GT car. I mean, I know you want to get that overall win. A GTD class Lexus might be a tall task.
I think that's a little.
I don't know if you want to channel Kevin Buckler to try and do as he did, or become the Kevin Buckler of retirements. But let's just close on this quickly. So here you are.
Here I am.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, and guys who know me know I'm fairly intense, and I'm
never heard that about you.
I'm really trying to step back and savor every moment, more than anything else. Not that I'm so excited to get back out there with the Lexus program. We were here last year with a brand new race car. Didn't know anything about the car. We got a season under our belt. We understand the car a lot better, so I'm looking forward to a solid race. The chances of overall are, non-existent because it's just not going to happen. However, I think that, you never know with this race. And so we've got to do what we do, just keep our head down. All the drivers got to do their job. And along the way, I want to just take it all in because there's one thing, and it's really kind of weird. And I think it's a little surreal for me right now.
Yeah. You got that little halo around you of like, okay, all right. I guess I said this is going to be it.
Yeah. And so I keep telling myself, one, how blessed I've been. Two, looking back at 50 years, which we're just kind of touching on that somewhat. And three, it's a place I dearly love. So take it in, man. Just savor every moment and be thankful for what the sport gave you. It's been truly one hell of a ride, and literally one hell of a ride. And it is one of those things where, I'm blessed, and I have a wonderful family that supported me all along the way, parents and now wife and kids, and another one of those things to go, I've spent 50 years getting here, and the sport has given that to me. And the good Lord has given that to me. And I need to enjoy every single moment of this 2018 Rolex 24.
So I'd catch a heck of a lot of flack if I didn't ask you this as our closing question. I saw the delightful Mrs. Pruett outside before we closed the door. Is there much family at home for you to say hi to, or are they all here for this?
So hi to my family at home will not be used. Well, I shouldn't say that. If I don't use it,
you're going to catch grief.
Exactly.
They're going to make you come back.
But my kids will be here. My wife is here. Friends and family will be here. Unfortunately, my parents don't travel as well as they used to, so they'll be at home.
But there will be parents to say hello to at home.
Absolutely.
And that was good old Not My Brother, Scott Pruett. He actually rang a couple days ago just to catch up, see how things were going in my world, and it's also neat to hear what's happening in his, and looking forward to seeing him just in a matter of days at the Rolex Monterey Motorsports reunion. And yeah, I don't know, it's probably just because I'm dumb and he has the same last name as I do, and it's spelled the same way, and I've followed him since I was 14 or 15 or whatever, but I just enjoy his time, our time, and know that there's a heck of a lot more for us to capture about NASCAR, Grand Am, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 17th chapters in his career. So lots of fun, hopefully, that we will continue to record and put out when we are able to meet up for whatever length of time. All right, I'm Marshall Pruett. This is the Marshall Pruett Podcast, presented by Cooper Tires, supported by PNC Bank. Thank you for listening.